this is Julie with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to bead weave the Ophelia bracelet, which is a nice little petite bracelet. Let me show you what it looks like on. And this bracelet uses Checkmate's 2-hole square beads, Checkmate's 2-hole crescent beads, some little 3mm fire polish beads in hematite, and it's capped off with a little magnetic clasp. And then for the stringing material, I'm using Fireline 0.006 in smoke. And this is 60 inches already placed on my needle with a stopper bead placed 15 inches from the tail. And then besides the needle, the only other tool you need is a pair of scissors. For this bracelet I'm going to show you in the video, it's going to measure 6.5 inches long. Each one of these little square beads adds 1/4 of an inch. So if you want to make it 7.5 inches, just add 2 square beads to each side. So to begin, we're going to place a square bead onto our needle and just through one of the holes and slide it down to your stopper bead. Then go ahead and go through the next hole that's part of this 2-hole bead and pull. And now we're going to pick up a second square bead and just loop around. So we're going back through that same hole we exited, just the opposite direction. I'm going to pull that down so that they're laying right next to each other. We're going to make a little chain of these guys, and we're going to do 9 of them. So I'm exiting the second hole of the first square bead that I strung on, and now I want to go back up through that first hole, which is nearest of the second bead. Okay. Now I need to jump over because I want to be exiting right here to be able to string on my next square bead. So I want to go down the second hole. And now I'm right where I want to be to pick up another square bead. And when you pull that, it sometimes needs a little bit of help for it to lay where you want it to lay. And at the end, we're actually going to do a whole reinforcing thread sequence here. That's going to make this lay a little straighter. So, again, we need to work our way so we're exiting where we want to exit. It'll be easier for you to see if I keep it on the cloth right here. So pick up another square bead. So we've got 4 and we just need 9. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So we're going to make sure that we complete this one by making sure it is fully attached, and we want to be exiting the hole that is nearest to the end, just as if we were going to pick up another one. But now instead of another square bead, we're going to start to pick up the crescents and the little 3mm beads. So what you want to do is you want to kind of eyeball how you're going to want these, and that's going to help you to know where you pick them up, because you can't just pick up these little beads by any hole in any different direction because they might not lay right otherwise. I'm sorry, that might be a little bit confusing, but you'll get the hang of it as you do this. So take a look at how you're going to want them oriented and lay them out on your table. You got to imagine that these guys are going to be on their side like that with the little 3mm between them. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pick up this guy here and pull him down. Now we want to jump up to his next hole, and we want to pick up the 3mm, and we also want to pick up the other crescent bead. Now to properly anchor this one, you're going to go ahead and slide it down. A lot of this bracelet is really keeping track of your tension. Now we're going to go through his second hole, through the square bead, and through the hole of the crescent bead as well, and pull. Now we're going to go ahead and jump back up and go all the way through the top holes again. And at this point, you're going to pick up that next crescent bead and pull it down. Jump up to its second hole. Again, making sure your tension is good. You're pulling these down as you go. And then another 3mm bead. And now keep in mind that you're now on the top holes, so you want to pick this crescent bead up via its top hole and pull it down. And jump down to its second hole and now go through the top hole of the first crescent bead you strung on, as well as the 3mm and also the top hole of that other crescent bead right over there. And pull. And then also go through the crescent bead next to it to help make it a little bit more secure. Now we're going to go through the top holes again of these crescent beads, as well as that 3mm bead. And now we're ready to pick up another crescent bead. So now keep in mind, these are your last two for this side of your bracelet. So you're going to pick it up via what is the bottom hole, slide it down. Now jump up to its second hole. Pull it. Now pick up that little 3mm and the next crescent. Jump down to its second hole and go through all these beads on the row before it. And I seem to never be, oh, I did it. Sometimes it seems like it's really impossible to get through that end crescent bead, but I was able to do it. There we go. Now we're ready to add our centerpiece, which is a little square bead and 4 little check glass beads. So take your 4 little check glass beads so you have them handy, as well as a square bead. At this point, you're just going to pick up one 3mm bead, your square bead, and another 3mm bead. And you're going to go back down through your crescent beads. So you're just making a nice loop so that stays centered. Now retrace your thread path and go back through the 3mm bead, as well as the square bead. And when you exit the square bead, we're going to jump over to its next hole so we can start working on the second half of this bracelet. Now for here, you need to add the 2 little side beads, but you also need to start adding the crescents again to make this fanned appearance. So for each little fan, you'll need the 2 crescents, as well as a 3mm. Okay, now we're ready to do the second half of our bracelet. So we're going to pick up that 3mm bead. Now note that you're going to be coming from the outside in here. So when you pick up this crescent bead, you want to pretend that it's laying like this. So you're going to pick it up from the outside. Now you're going to take another 3mm, another crescent, and another 3mm, and slide those guys down and go back through your square bead. Now we're going to retrace our steps and we're going to go through the 3mm again, as well as the crescent, the 3mm and the crescent, and pull snug. Now we're going to jump over to the second hole of that crescent bead. At this point, we're coming from the outside here again of this crescent bead, so I'm going to flip him over, and then I'm going to pick up another 3mm and my other crescent bead and go through this crescent bead here. So it's real tempting at this point to just try to jump over right here, but then we'd have this thread bridge showing right there. So we don't want to do that. So we have to retrace our steps a little bit to get where we want to get to. So now we're going to jump back up here. Lay it down on the table so you can see what we're doing. So it's now the top hole of that same crescent bead that we were just exiting. And now we're going to go back. And then we're going to exit this crescent bead right here. But we're not going to exit this one that's right above it. And we are going to now jump over, or I should say jump down, to that second hole in that crescent bead that we're presently on. So our thread bridges are only on the outside of the crescent beads so that they're hidden. So again, we're coming from, so this is the orientation that we want our beads to be in, but because we're coming from the outside, we're going to flip this guy over, pick him up in this way. There we go. So those are the crescent beads we want. And go through this second hole of that crescent bead that's already attached. So now we have that nice fanned appearance. But again, we're at the same situation where if we just jump down, we'd have an outside thread bridge, which we don't want. So we're going to retrace our steps a little bit. And do the same thing. And now we want to go through this 3mm and just the one crescent bead. Now lay this down. Okay, so we're exiting where we want to exit to pick up the first square bead on this side of our bracelet. We're going to pick up a square bead and go through the crescent bead on the other side. But again, we're in that same situation where we don't want a thread bridge. So one last time of retracing our steps. Okay. We're going to go through the crescent bead and we're going to go through the square bead, but we're not going to go through this crescent bead right here. So now we can just jump over to the second hole in our square bead. And we're going to pick up another square bead. And the hard work of this bracelet is now complete. And you're just going to make another little chain segment, essentially, of these square beads. Same process that you did on the other side. What's nice about this bracelet is if you want to make multiples of it, you get plenty of beads to do so. So you can make many of these bracelets. And once you do one, it does get a lot easier. It's just wrapping your head around how to orient those crescent beads, and then also how do you hide any potential thread paths that would show. We're going to add our final square bead to this design. And then we're going to add the clasp. So, square bead almost attached. Okay, so we're exiting the hole. Final square bead attached. So now we're ready to go ahead and add our clasp. So it's a magnetic clasp with a little loop on the end. You're going to separate it out and you're going to pull two of your little 3mm beads. So we're going to pick up a 3mm, go through the little hole, and it is magnetic, so it will stick to your needle. And then another 3mm, and just loop around and go back through your square bead. And that's how the clasp is going to be attached. And now go back through your square beads, and you're going to go back through the whole line of them. It's just reinforcing the attachment method here. It's also going to give us a spot where we can hide our knots amongst the crescent beads so we don't see them on the edge of the square beads. Okay, go through the hole closest to the crescent beads. Don't exit a crescent bead though. Pull snug and then make a knot. So we're just going to pass under it, go through the little loop we created and pull tight. And we're going to do that again. This time we're going to go through it twice. It's a nice little knot hidden in there. Now at this point you can go up through the crescent bead, and go through the second hole of the crescent bead, and that's another nice little place to tie a knot. Just want your tail to be woven in there a little bit, and then you can trim off your excess thread. And then you'll go to the other side and you'll take your stopper bead off and you'll do the exact same attachment method with another 2 3mm beads and the magnetic clasp. We are all done, so I want to show you the finished piece. Again, this is what it's going to look like on, and there's the clasp. So if you're planning out your project, I do want to give you actual numbers here of the supplies you're going to be using. For a 6.5-inch bracelet, you're going to be using 19 of the square beads. A 7.5-inch bracelet will be 23 of the square beads. The crescent and the 3mm will stay the same no matter how many you're going to use. For the 3mm, you're going to be using 14 of them. And for the crescents, you're going to be using 12 and just one little clasp. So like I mentioned earlier, you can make a lot of these bracelets with just the amount of beads you will receive for this project. And it's a fun project to do. It is a little bit of a mind bender, making sure you get those crescent beads oriented properly and don't have any exposed thread bridges. But the result is really pretty and doesn't take too long to do. You can find other tutorials using square beads, crescent beads, and a whole host of other 2-hole beads at beadaholique.com.